Perfect. All right, Dave. Excited about talking about like gangsters and felons and blood and guts and long sequels. Oh, you're not even there. Welcome, everyone. We are actually live on YouTube, and Dave is actually not here yet. And there he is. He's arrived. He's arrived here to see it. Dave, you walked away as soon as I pushed live on YouTube. So
premature.
Like an empty chair as we were sitting there.
I'm not even sure if I'm on the video. Okay. Okay. Send me the link.
The link is coming your way right about now.
I still don't have it.
There it is. Yeah, I gave it to you.
Copy. No, I don't have it. No, I do have it. Okay, so then I gotta
send it out here.
This, and then I gotta look because of the interconnectivity that we get with the Apple iOS platform. Are you gonna bleep that out?
Okay, not live. We're live, pal.
Sorry. I might lose your job. Paste. Tweet. I tweeted it. Should I tweet it? Share. Should I fleet it?
Sure. Well, why not? We're everywhere else, Dave.
Oh my god. Okay, I fleeted it.
I don't actually really know what that even means.
I don't know. I've been posting on it because it's there, and you know.
And why not if it's there?
Review of the God. This is what people pay to see.
Us sharing things. All right, cool. It is up and running here. So we have to do a bit of a cold open here. You're recording, by the way, Dave?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to assume that I am. Yeah.
So this is how we're going to open it up here. Dave, you're not a brother, you're not a friend, and I don't want to know you.
I got nothing. What are we talking about?
That's how we're starting the episode.
You're gonna fucking Fredo me? Jesus Christ.
He says that to Fredo. Remember, we talked about this before we went live. You're cleaning out the storage closet.
It's all about what does that have anything to do with the storage closet? Right,
I'm getting annoyed at you because of you making a racket. Let me do this again. Dave, you're not a brother, you're not a friend, and I don't want to know you. What the heck have you been doing all morning?
I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know. I didn't know what they were gonna do. I don't know if that works. Are you? What are you referring to?
You went through this door over here in the corner of this room, and you've been rattling around, bringing out boxes, rifling through things. What is it that you are trying to look for?
Well, just anytime I see a door, and then I open it, and then I see stuff, I've got to take it out.
Yes, we've had really good luck at going through doors recently. That's how we got here. This is how we found our way into this stupid little bunker. I've been eating Funyuns for 2 weeks, god damn it.
Well, it looks like if I pulled everything out, there might be a smaller door in the back with a wormhole. Unfortunately, it's just
Alice in Wonderland style.
Yeah, it's just all this paperwork. Why do you keep so much paper in a random room?
By the way, can you hold these guns for me?
I had to wrap it in a towel. Oh, wrong movie. Yeah.
No, that happens in this one too. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle. This is a podcast where a sentient machine was forcing us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. The apocalypse, I think, has actually happened as we find ourselves now in what I'm calling purgatory with a light. We do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. Currently, due to technical difficulties, we are stuck in a small circular room. We're stuck in a small circular room filled with some technology that we can't get to work. And today, the machine has asked us to talk about The Godfather Part 2. Of course, I think we need to give a great big thank you to our patron, Green Girl YYC, who keeps our Patreon afloat over there. If you want to help us monetarily, absolutely, you can do so from that Patreon site. But Dave, I think we do need to talk a little bit about the history that we have with the Godfather films, first and foremost. They definitely have had a huge impact in the history of film. So why don't we talk about Francis Ford Coppola kind of in general, but really the first Godfather film? What is your history with those films or that film?
These are movies that I was not alive for their theatrical release. So I discovered them later on in my adulthood. They obviously have pantheon status. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you're not a movie nerd or whatever, you grow up and you know that there is a movie called The Godfather.
I
Um,
find that like most movie lists, like best of all time lists, whether it's like the Sight and Sound, American Film Institute, whatever it happens to be, like both of these movies show up somewhere in that list, and very often they top those lists.
yeah,
So it's
usually
yeah,
top 25, not top 10.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't remember when I first rented it, but I remember the first time I watched the first one, I was engrossed. Do you know what that word means? It was like
It means that
growing
you're
up.
watching it and are grossed out.
Yeah, I was just like, ugh. No, it was great. And you might know the actual runtime, but it's one of those movies where when you watch some sweeping epics, you just don't realize that you're building bed sores. It's
Right.
a
I
great
mean, the
feeling. Yeah.
first film is long. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes. So it's long. I mean, the Godfather Part 2 is even longer. It's 3 hours and 23, I think, is what the full runtime is.
And presumably, outside of the fiction of this, I might have made the decision to watch the first one in order to watch the second one. And I do have to say that having watched it so recently, Kyle, it holds up very well. And it's what would become an A-list cast. I don't know if they
Mhm.
were quite A-listers at the time, with the exception of the crazy old man. And
Oh, right.
it,
Marlon, yes.
it's uh, it's a masterpiece, in my
Mhm.
opinion. I think it's it's a great, great, great movie.
The first time that I watched the original Godfather, I think I've told this story before about how by accident, watched this TV special, the American Film Institute 100 Years, 100 Films is what it was called. And so they counted down the 100 best films of all time from 100 to 1. And afterwards, coincidentally, Columbia House sent out a flyer being like, hey, you can subscribe to us. And each month we will send you a VHS copy of one of these films in the 100 best films of all time list. And so one of those films that came was The Godfather. I was, I'm going to say somewhere between 14 and 16. I actually don't remember exactly the time frame or what age I was, but around there, teenager at least. And I watched the original Godfather once again with my parents in the room. And I found the same thing. Like I really enjoyed The Godfather. And I think I watched it one more time, probably in university when I was taking a film class, and have never seen it since that time until very recently. Let's say in the last couple of days.
Hmm.
Um, and
A nice
I
happenstance.
I also happened because I mean, there's nothing but just old media here in this bunker, so I'm just watching so many things. I also happened to watch Citizen Kane here recently, and the biggest thing I realized about both Citizen Kane and The Godfather is I think that because so many people talk about how great they are and how oftentimes they're considered the best films of all time, that you can kind of internalize over time. You're like, oh, these are overrated. Like everyone talks about these films. There's no way that they all hold up after, in this case, like just about 50 years. In Kane's case, we're talking like 80 years almost. Um, and then when you watch them, it's like, oh no, I understand why these are considered so great. And The Godfather is like what you just said. Like you're engrossed the entire time. It's phenomenal in that first Godfather film how literally every scene has become iconic. Like it's one scene after the other. It's like, oh yeah, it's the wedding scene, and oh yeah, it's like the horse head scene, and oh yeah, it's like the diner scene, and then oh right, it's the gun scene. Like it keeps going through all of those things. Like yeah, I know everything that's about to happen, and I forgot that this is the order it goes in. Um, and like all the actors who have become famous later on. It's a great movie. The only thing I find that's slight, small detraction is And it's just a me thing, is that I get pretty listless in the last 30 minutes. And it's not even that I think there's something that can be cut out. I think it's all relevant. It's just like, all right, I'm getting antsy now. And then it has one of the best final scenes in cinema. So, I mean, it kind of comes back in on itself again. But I agree. It's a great, great movie. I have never seen The Godfather Part 2. For some reason, I have seen the first Godfather multiple times, and I decided, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to see the other Godfather films. This is good enough for me, and have never watched the other ones. I think maybe the 3.5 hours was a deterrent a bit. But so I've never seen. Have you seen The Godfather Part 2?
Yes, I did the trilogy, which I don't like to acknowledge because the third one should be stricken from the records.
There are some people. There
No,
is
nope,
a counter
nope,
movement to that
nope,
film that's happening
nope,
currently. So
nope. I didn't even hear what you just said because it's irrelevant. No, I think I remember watching the first two, and I did it not quite in the super nerd LOTR way, like in one night, but as a project. This must
mhm.
have been a few years ago. And sort of to what you just said, there is some hot debate as to the positioning of the two movies, which one is supposed to be better. And so I have a
Yes.
strong intuition and memory that I think that while both films are deservingly perhaps in the top 100 of all those lists, I think the first one is better. So it'll be interesting to see. And
Mhm.
from what loosely I can recall, it's the second one that, talking about the last 30 minutes, any generational sweeping epic is going to have trouble bringing timelines together. And I think that's what falls apart at the end of the first one because you start second guessing what year it is even.
Yeah, it
I
certainly
just
doesn't
remember,
hold your hand necessarily, like where we
no.
are in the timeline.
And kind of like your point too, like I was thinking, would this be better if they just threw a little subtitle that it's now 1953? I don't know, maybe not. It might have just been, pedantic. But my memory of the second one is that it's an even broader gulf, and there's just too much to absorb. But we'll see. I don't know. That's how I remember
Mhm.
part two. But I think it's a good movie. I remember enjoying it. Um, so it's good that they had two Godfather movies in
Yeah, I
history.
mean,
Yeah.
this machine is currently, because we have no year as our rudder currently, that we're just talking about things from the letterbox top 250. So it's just kind of this random selection that we're now looking at. I guess just briefly, do you have any thoughts or feelings on Francis Ford Coppola?
I think kind of like we talked about Stanley Kubrick. I think that there's an essence where his genius was a particular epoch, and I don't know if I connect with Francis Ford Coppola now, but I don't know what's his culmination. The vampire movie. I'm not even sure after Interview the Vamp. Oh no,
I
after
think
Dracula, what he made that I would remember.
um I would say that maybe, yeah, Bram Stoker's Dracula, which he directed, is maybe the last
Big
thing
one,
that would come into the zeitgeist quite so much. I
right?
believe he did The Rainmaker right after that, which is a
Oh,
fine.
is that a Coppola movie, The
It
Rainmaker?
is,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then he's been doing weird things since then. He still makes movies, like a movie every 3 to 4 years. He still
Oh,
makes them. No one talks about them, but he still does make movies. So, but let's do this. Apparently we still have to thank sponsors up here in this bunker. So I'm going to go thank some sponsors. And then when we return, we'll be talking more about The Godfather Part 2.
Alberta Podcast made us an offer that we couldn't refuse.
Yes, 25 whole dollars to keep feeding into these vending machines. Uh, well, 12.50 really for each of us.
Hey, let's not get picky.
All right.
Let's not split those hairs.
Well, Dave, what do you think?
Oh wait, did we just watch it? It was
We just watched it, Dave. As non-spoilery as possible, do you think, was this an offer you could refuse, or did you want to take this offer?
I think that if one were so inclined to watch something like a top 100, this is required viewing still,
Hmm.
much like the first one. I still hold to my belief that the first one is superior, not because this is a bad movie. I just uh, it felt awkward to me. It is amazing to see so many, again, A-listers, and they're so young, developing
Can I just say something though?
Sure.
And I may or may not have texted this to you while we were watching the movie, which is I don't know what happened, and this is going to sound so mean, and I apologize, but it's been 2 years between the first Godfather and the second Godfather when it gets made. And Robert Duvall looks like he aged 10 years. Like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. Like, he just looks way, way older than anybody else in the cast aged in those intervening 2 years. So he did some hard living, I guess, in those two intervening years.
He is, I mean, from a little background research, and he's older to start, and
Yeah.
in those sort of 40s, you start to break down. I think because he was born in 31, or I can't remember, so he's probably in his late 30s, early 40s, and also apparently he's quite a heavy womanizer and a heavy drinker. So
Well, that could be
these
part
things
of
will
it.
catch up with you.
I think it's actually pretty amazing for, again, a film 1974, and this is not true for a lot of films made at that time, how many of the cast is actually still alive.
Yeah.
Like the vast majority of them are still alive and still making movies and still have a career. That is not necessarily the case for a lot of early 70s films.
Well, that's the other thing about this being such an A-list ensemble. It's not just that they're still acting. It's like they're still big stars in their own right. I mean, you could definitely see there's a tail off. These are not people that make a movie a year anymore. But if you see Bobby De Niro, actually Robert
De Niro was in The War of the Grandpa, the number one box office smash of 2020. I mean, it made $50 million, and that's like the number one movie, but still, yes.
But yeah, they're all kicking it, and they're all about my dad's age. They're all born in the mid 40s, so I think what the other trick is, when Godfather came out, they were all young. They were all sort of just
they're all
out,
just getting started almost, yeah.
With the exception of Robert Duvall, and of course Marlon Brando, who refused to be in the second one. But I think
doing some research myself, he did not refuse to be in it. He actually agreed to be in it, and then just didn't show up on the day of filming. He was supposed to be there, and so they had to shoot around it. Which is maybe why there's a certain scene where it's very obvious that he's supposed to be there and he's not shown whatsoever.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I realized I was going to spoil it, but we'll wait. We'll wait to discuss that one scene.
Anyways, any other overarching opinions about this film?
No, I mean, we discussed this as well while we were sitting here watching it, that I think Diane Keaton is incredible for being so visible with such minimal material. And
she is not given a lot to do, and yet she still makes an impression on the viewer. It's really remarkable what she's able to do. Actually, her and Talia Shire both, I think, are able to grab the reins, and I think they're both maybe in this film for 10 minutes. Like, they're not in it for very long.
No.
And yet they're still impressionable, and you still remember them by the end.
And they do such a great job. And this is not a nod to the script writing, which is clearly so male centric, but they do such a great job evolving into those few different characters. I mean, they're always going to be sort of a neurotic breakdown trope of women in mafia movies, but they're great at it. It was fantastic watching them, particularly looking at 1 and 2 as a combination and seeing how these people all age. It's
there's a lot of great write-ups on the making of this movie, how it got made in the first place. One of the biggest things is that Coppola, one of his requirements to come back and make this film was the understanding from the studio that they could combine this with Godfather 1 to make a very long piece. And in fact, that did get released onto television as a miniseries in the mid to late 70s at some point, where they combined Godfather 1 and 2 for 90-minute episodes.
In sequence, or did they recut it?
No, it's cutting back and forth between first. It's not like all of Godfather 1 and all of Godfather 2. It's all of them kind of combined together.
That's I mean, as much as I think, if I were to do that, and maybe this is what they did, I would split the schism in part 2 with the 2 generational counterpoints, even though I think that's an important part of the way the plot is meant to reflect on itself, and play them chronologically. I think it would have had more narrative power to separate them. I just started. I mean, this is my biggest criticism is, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but part two is two movies cut into one, or two storylines counterpointing each other.
Right. And I was going to bring this up as part of my overview of Godfather 2, which is I agree with you in that I think Godfather 1 is the superior film, even though I quite liked Godfather 2 quite a bit. But it is longer. It's more sprawling. I don't think it is as gripping as what the first one is, but it's still engaging, if that makes any sense. If you look at reviews from the time, from when it was initially released, one of the major things that critics brought up is exactly what you're talking about, is that you have the Michael storyline, which could hold up on its own, and you continue to break narrative momentum by flashing back to his father. Now, part of this was apparently Mario Puzo, who helped co-write the script, really wanted to make a movie about a father and son who are the same age and show that what they were doing at the exact same age. And I think it does work, but I have to agree. It's like I'm in the Michael storyline a little bit more than I am with the Vito storyline, even though the Vito stuff ends up being pretty climactic in kind of showing how the whole family started itself. But you don't get that in Godfather 1. Godfather 1 is moving very fast. It's always going to the next scene. It has that propulsion to it, and everything leads into each other. We're not like, okay, let's pause. We're going to go back in time, and we're going to go and show this. There's constantly that push and pull I find in Godfather 2 that takes me up just a little bit more than Godfather 1.
I think interestingly, the effect that maybe Mario Puzo wants is more effective in the first one, because instead of them being the same age, just the presence of old Marlon and young Michael, so old Vito, young Michael, already gives you that story, I think. And you get their evolving characters in contrast to each other. And this one, it almost felt like they're trying to make it even more extreme. And we could talk about that a little, I don't know if now or later, but Al Pacino begins his almost, what's the right word? Not characterization, but he starts to become a bit of a meme already.
He's doing
career.
He's doing some Al Pacinoisms for sure inside this movie.
Building there, and De Niro's still young, so he's not quite.
He does not. I think what did they say? He only speaks 12 words of English in this entire film. Like he's speaking in Sicilian for the majority of it.
So there's something to that where it's entertaining. I will say there's an intermission in the second one.
Yes.
I actually breathed a sigh of relief and needed a break, that's not always a great sign. But
no, but I found the same thing for like Lawrence of Arabia, which also has an intermission. It's like, yes, I've been sitting here for almost 3 hours. Yes. I think I need to get up and do something.
The only time I felt disappointed with the intermission was Seven Samurai, because I wanted that thing to keep kicking. But that was also at like the 2.5 hour mark. So
yes,
my butt was happy. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get into some spoiler talk, I suppose, for this movie that's almost 50 years old, but still, we'll do some spoiler talk. And let's do some background. So The Godfather Part 2 was released on December 12th, 1974. It is rated 9.0 on IMDb, 90 on Metacritic, and then on Rotten Tomatoes, it is at 98% from 85 critics and 97% from 411,502 users. That is, it just slightly eclipses Spirited Away from last week as being like the best rated film that we've ever talked about on this show here, at least. It is widely available, so you can buy or rent this on iTunes and YouTube, and in Canada, at least, you can stream it on Amazon Prime or on Netflix. So it's available in a bunch of places. Now, we have to remember this is in 1974 dollars, but its budget was $13 million. It's hard to find information on like opening and domestic versus international, but it ended up with $48 million, which sounds low, but do you know what that is after you consider inflation, Dave?
No.
$48 million in 1974 would be like if a movie made $253 million today. So it made a lot of money.
I still think we need to do some kind of correlation with the average ticket price, because that was probably a time where you could see a movie for $2
$2 or something. Yeah.
So I wonder what the average number of butts were in theaters for them. It would have been high. Yeah, it would have been
Yes,
a
for
lot of
sure.
people.
Its plot description from IMDb is the early life and career of Vito Corleone in 1920s New York City is portrayed while his son, Michael, expands and tightens his grip on the family crime syndicate. So, pretty concise plot for a 3.5 hour long film.
That was when people let you watch a movie instead of having to tell you what it was about, right?
That is true. They didn't have to show you the ending of the movie so that you would come to see it. Um, it stars Al Pacino as Michael Corleone, Robert De Niro as Vito Corleone, John Cazale as Frito Corleone, Robert Duvall as Tom Hagen, Diane Keaton as Kay. She doesn't get a last name in the credits, and Lee Strasberg as Hyman Roth, which, by the way, I just need to say this, is one of my favorite character names of all time, Hyman Roth. What a good name, which works both for like 1950s gangster and Star Wars villain.
Oh
Hyman
wow.
Roth. Like, it just sounds good, doesn't it?
I can't believe you went Star Wars. Let's recover our dignity and move on.
No, anything that you want to say about any of those actors
Um,
that we haven't said already?
yeah, I don't know. They're all incredible. I mean, this is not surprising, but doing the brief write up, other than I think all of them have Oscars. Robert De Niro's, you know, mid 70s through 90s. No, maybe 2000s. I don't know how many times he was nominated for an Oscar or
A
took
bunch, yeah.
part. Yeah, took part in what is considered a historically seminal film in many different genres, and it's not just gangster films. I mean,
No, he did a
it's
bunch, yeah.
it's fascinating. Diane Keaton,
Mm-hmm.
Diane Keaton. You know what's interesting about Diane Keaton? Her actual name is Diane Hall.
Oh,
And Annie Hall, because she and Woody Allen sort of came up together. She was in the original production of whatever his first big play was that became a movie too. Whatever. And so they did a lot of plays and movies together. And when they did Annie Hall, apparently that was written by Woody
specifically
as
for her.
well about her and
Mm.
about their relationship in an idealized fashion. And she's even quoted as saying, like, this is how Woody viewed our relationship in a jokingly theatrical manner. And so yeah, like her nickname to some people was Annie. Her maiden name, her non-stage name was Hall. So
I love Diane Keaton. She's great. I think the big call out here is Lee Strasberg. If you may not know, he is a very famous acting teacher. Like, people went to the Strasberg School to learn acting. In fact, one of those people was Al Pacino, who actually got him to come and do this. They actually offered it to somebody else, and now I'm blanking on who that was, but a big name at the time, and they turned it down. And so Al Pacino said, "Oh, you should get Lee to come over and do this role." And
just
then,
get Lee. Yeah.
he got an Oscar nomination out of it for this film.
He's fantastic in this movie.
Mhm.
He does sleazeball quite well.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does really, really great.
I mean, we talked briefly about Robert Duvall. So the story of him being a womanizer drunk is apparently starts when he was roommates with Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman when they were coming up together. And there's a gross quote, something like, "Acting is the best way to open legs," or something. Like, it's gross.
Boy.
He's also considers himself a libertarian conservative, so we'll just leave that alone. I mean, it's kind of obvious, you know.
Sure.
Look at him.
But also a great actor too. I mean, you have
Fantastic.
to say, yeah, he's
been
great.
Oscar baiting a little bit in his old age, which was, you know, it's interesting. I didn't think he had already won an Oscar, but he had one for a movie
in the
I've never heard of.
late 80s.
Late
Yeah.
80s. Something about a country western singer.
Yeah, he was a country western singer. I've never seen it either. It's something.
Not my genre.
Yeah, I know.
As
You
we've
made it
discussed.
abundantly clear. The other big one is John Cazale, who actually passed away in the late 70s. And in the 5 film appearances he was in, all 5 of those movies were nominated for Best Picture.
He's fantastic.
So, interesting little fun fact. So he plays Frito in this movie. And yeah, he's really the only one of the major actors, I guess, besides Lee Strasberg, who is not alive nowadays. But of all the young actors, yeah, he's the only one who did not survive until modern day.
But did he? What was it, like brain cancer or something?
Yeah, it was
leukemia.
something.
There's
Yeah,
something tragic.
it was
Yeah.
very tragic. Yeah.
Um,
Of course, this was written by Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Just a little write up that the machine gave us here. Mario Puzo is probably best known for the three Godfather films that were based on his book called The Godfather. But he's also credited for writing the 1974 film Earthquake. And he was also the team that wrote the 1978 version of Superman. Isn't that weird? As well as basically his only other big writing credit was on the other Francis Ford Coppola film, 1984, called The Cotton Club. I have not seen that film either, but
I, I just wish I remember the name of the book, but I think my first Mario Puzo sort of connection is my dad, for some reason, when I was at in high school, had a Mario Puzo book on a shelf,
wow.
which I ended up reading. I suspect because he used to travel a lot. Maybe it was an airport purchase, because it's not like he read gangster literature. Um, and I remember reading it, and it was fantastic. I just don't remember the name because this was more than 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well,
But
what a lot of people will comment on, like The Godfather, the book, The Godfather, how this is like an expert way to adapt from source material, because the book is actually not considered all that great. It's kind of like a pulpy thing.
oh, it's
And this is
Pulp
like,
Fiction.
yeah, it is like, this is kind of, I don't know, lifting that up into like, I don't know, what do you call that? Austere status or something like that.
Would you maybe use the word auteur? Would you?
No, I don't know. I don't understand what that word means. Uh, of course, Coppola really made a name for himself. Coppola really made a name for himself with the first Godfather film, but he started in B movies with legendary producer Roger Corman, who, interestingly enough, plays one of the senators in the scene with the senators in this film. But the 70s were really his decade. So the two Godfather films, The Conversation and Apocalypse Now, all came out in the 70s. Huge movies. Other notable things that he's directed are The Outsiders, Rumblefish, Captain EO from Disneyland, the Michael
Michael Jackson.
Jackson
Yeah.
sci-fi thing, Peggy Sue Got Married, Bram Stoker's Dracula, The Rainmaker, and Jack, the
That's
Robin Williams as a kid, but as
Oh,
Robin
wow.
Williams.
That was a Francis Ford Coppola movie.
No idea how that fits into his oeuvre. I have a feeling, honestly, that was some sort of tax write-off thing. There's like, we just need to make a movie and get
What?
it out, and like this is going to shield me getting my winery built or something. Like, I don't know that to be true, but that's what it feels like to me.
His greatest legacy for you is probably Nick Cage.
Well, yeah, well, his nephew Nick Cage, yes,
Yeah,
that is
because
right.
you respect Nick Cage, and
But his oh my gosh, his daughter, what's her first
Sophia
name?
Coppola.
Sophia Coppola, who's made some great movies,
Yeah, if you're into like depressing emo,
which I
you know,
am.
yeah, and
Although I did not really
awful
care for
actress.
her. I did not really care for her last film. I'll put that out there. But
Awful actress. Yeah. She almost single-handedly is the reason why Godfather 3 is a terrible movie.
okay,
And
yeah, let's blame the one woman in the film for.
uh, it's bad. Yeah, never mind the
I've never
writing.
seen it, so I don't know. I can't
I think you
comment on it.
should
Yeah.
harm yourself that way and watch it just to.
Hmm.
And then, interestingly enough, I mean, Talia Shire is
I think it's Shire,
his sister,
right?
and apparently there's another sibling that has begot Jason Schwartzman, as we just read, which is
Whoa,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's weird.
Jason Schwartzman is a
Yeah, I
Coppola.
didn't realize that he was related to Nicolas Cage somehow, but
Yeah, what a weird family dinner that would be, right?
just
Huh.
yelling at each other and
If they all get along. Yeah.
being neurotic. Yeah. Just lastly, in the 2000s, he's basically made art house films, and maybe that's not the best way to describe them, but they're low budget movies that nobody goes to see. So these include Youth Without Youth, Tetro, Twixt, and Distant Vision. And there's the upcoming film called Megalopolis that will be coming out here next year, apparently.
Good.
I don't know anybody who's actually seen any of those films. So,
I mean, not to make it a competition, but I mean, I didn't really like Irishman, but Scorsese's still out there trying to make big hits, you know.
I was medium on The Irishman, which, by the way, fun fact about this movie, Coppola really did not want to direct the sequel. He did not want to, and he actually said you should hire Scorsese, who had just made Mean Streets.
Yeah.
And the studio was like, no, absolutely not. We're not gonna bring on an
Take a
untested
gamble.
director on Martin Scorsese. So that's an interesting weird thing that
Scorsese has a lot
an
of
alternate timeline that could have happened had they got him to do it.
Scorsese has a lot of interesting credits too, but we'll talk about him if we ever get to a Scorsese movie. But
Scorsese picture, yeah.
He's made a lot of weird movies that I had no idea he directed. I just
Oh
saw them
yeah.
on the Robert De Niro.
Well, this is the thing. Not to make this a Martin Scorsese podcast, which somewhat annoys me. Like, he is definitely known for his like gangster movies. I think he's actually only made 5 gangster movies in like the 20 movies that he's actually made. But he's done like The Age of Innocence, which is like a costume drama. He made Hugo, which is, you know, your kids film. He made this other film that I actually quite like called After Hours, which is this weird bonkers comedy. So like, he does push himself to do other things besides just one type of movie.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on.
So let's get more into The Godfather Part 2. Where do you want to start? I think where I want to talk about some other positives here before I get kind of into some of my other negative things. Number one, I think that there is a level of confidence that Coppola is showing here that is remarkable because he is in his like early 30s, maybe late 20s when he's making this. Like, he's still a young dude. I clocked it. It is 23 minutes before we even see Al Pacino, the ostensible star of this movie. 27 minutes before he actually speaks a line of dialogue. So when you're a star of your film, the first who's on the poster, the name above the title, it doesn't even get seen for like the first 23 minutes. I think that's a level of confidence to be like, hey, the audience is going to be with us. We can be patient and we'll get there. And I think that's interesting that he decided to do it that way.
I think the word patient is the apt one. Even in the first movie, there's something so deliberate and focused. So, for example, the opening wedding scene, much like the beginning of this film, there's a slow burn that doesn't bore you because there are so many little details, whether you understand what you're looking for or not, that enrichen the environment. You know, like a good appetizer, or getting a nice odor as you walk into a restaurant. A good one, not the if you walk by a washroom or something. So, you know, it starts off, and I mean, clearly I'm not a big nerd with a stopwatch, so I didn't time how long it took for someone to show up on the screen.
I tapped the screen, but yes.
But it is fascinating. And to your point, I didn't even realize that he wasn't just leading off, hoo-hawing from the first minute.
Right. Well, let's get the hoo-has out of the way. Just a question, a plot point that I just don't know the answer to. So this movie starts, of course, with the young Vito Corleone. His father is killed by the mafia there. His brother is then killed in the first scene, and his mother takes him to the Don. She gets murdered violently, so he runs away to go to America. So he immigrates to America, and he's going through customs immigration. And they take this like little ruler and measure his eyelids. I imagine this is something racist, but what are they doing? Do you have any idea what they're doing there?
I didn't notice the ruler, but I thought they were just checking for smallpox and jaundice.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, because I know in that era, scurvy and jaundice are still a big problem because that was 1901 or whatever. So the powers of vitamin C and just going on refugee boats across the ocean, that would have been probably a 2-month journey. It's not like the boats of today.
But I don't believe in communicable diseases, Dave. I don't think you can actually.
Yeah, it is a sham.
It's a bit of a sham.
Microchips in. I remember that was a bit jarring. Just a quick note. When Vito's mom is killed, that violent shotgun recoil, holy shit. That's like, for that to be 1974, they're still trying to reproduce that effect in modern action films. It actually looked like they shot her with a shotgun.
Yes, absolutely.
Not that I would know what that's like, but that's how I would imagine it, because that's point blank with the 12 gauge. You're going to not collapse. With some of the death scenes in the first movie where they'll put or in this one too, they'll put like a little dot and blood coming out. Well,
there's a lot more choking I found in this film.
Garroting.
Choked them out a lot more. Yeah, a garrote.
A lot of garrote. So when they looked at his eyelid, I also was like, what are they doing? But then they showed that he's sick and he has to be quarantined. I mean, a lot of prescient right? There's a lot there to read into coronavirus. So
For sure.
yeah, I thought
I
it was more interesting that he's like a 9-year-old kid passing through customs on his own. And they're just
uh,
like, yep, all right. What's your last name? Doesn't speak English. We're gonna call you Corleone. Let's move on. You
yeah,
know, it's
go to
fascinating.
that line. Yeah.
Uh,
I um I think there's a lot of prescient things in this that I think are still relevant to today. I think one of the biggest one that is actually brought up in the first film too, but I think really hammered home in this, which is there's that conversation that he has at his son's christening. Is his christening? Anyways, the big party
baptism,
that's happening at the very
communion,
yeah,
communion,
I think it's communion. No, baptism. It's his baptism.
baptism. Sure.
Anyways, it's him and the senator in his office, and he's like, Senator, we're both part of the same hypocrisy. And I think it's really shown in this is like both the political class and the mafia are kind of doing the same thing. They're lying, they're stealing, they're, you know, doing nefarious things. It's just that one is looked at as being quote unquote respectable, and one is trying to be broken up and go to jail, sort of thing. And I mean, there's a level of racism that is being shown that is what's driving a lot of that. But is there a huge difference between the political class and the criminal class, I guess we'll call it? And I don't know if I think the movie comes down to me like there isn't. There is not much difference between these two.
I think that one of the main themes towards the end, as they bring up with their allusion to the Empire of Rome, is this political and philosophical question about power and influence. And you bring up this idea of maybe standard politics having more legitimacy, and the mafia, for example, being this underworld shadow. But particularly in the first movie, there's this almost fairy tale insinuation that when it's about family, that we're to empathize with the mafia, that a lot of their cruelty, particularly in the golden age pre-drugs, and this is a theme that occurs in all mafia movies, I feel like, just before they did drugs, when it was gambling, prostitution, alcohol, they
I
were
see what you're
good
saying.
guys,
Yeah.
right? Um, so it is an interesting and intentional statement about
Well,
politics in the
yeah.
70s.
Well, I want to delve into that a little bit. We'll double back on the political angle. Do you feel that these films, like Godfather 1 and 2 in particular, and mafia films in general, are glorifying the mafia, or are they trying to hold them into account and showing like these are not good people and you should not get roped up into them? Or they're being like, isn't this really cool what they get to do? Like, where do you fall on that divide?
Well, I think it depends on the director. You know what I think? I think the ones that have stood the test of time. So Scorsese, the Godfather movies, um, both have an ambiguity about it, but ultimately are actually saying that this is not a good way to live your life. Because ultimately, all of the characters self-destruct or are destroyed by the choices they make in their life. Modern gangster movies had particular, I mean, there are a lot of mediocre or crappy ones where they're trying to glorify the thug's life. Even if people get what's theirs in the end, there's too much focus on the pomp, the bling and the power. And they get lost in this surface level idea that if you've got a bigger gun, if you've got more, more backup, that you're going to win some kind of war. If there's anything that comes out of Godfather, is that I think that this is, particularly the second one, you see it in the first one starting, is a movie about the perils of power and influence. And I think ultimately the reason why they wanted to counterpoint is, again, if there's anything being glorified, it's that Vito Corleone did it for the quote unquote right reasons. He did it for
Mm-hmm.
family and community, and not out of a sense of personal sort of satisfaction, but out of necessity. Whether that's a good message or not, who knows? But with Michael, you see that the opposite is true. And particularly in the last scene, you realize this is not even something that's evolved because he reluctantly had to take power of this family. He was likely a sociopath from the beginning because he's the only member who didn't give a shit about his family. And in the end, he suffers the most. Whether he doesn't die, but he suffers the most for it. So there,
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I don't know, like this is just a thought that popped into my head. So you're free to push back on it. But if we look at Godfather 1, to me that was basically framed as a loss of innocence for Michael. Like maybe he had these harborings for a long time. But even in this film, it's shown like I want to, fight for my country. I am trying to be selfless to myself, sort of thing. I want to give back to my country or to my community, and that goes away by the end of Godfather 1. Here it's his loss of humanity completely, where it's like I am willing to kill my own brother, I am willing to throw other people under the bus. I don't really care. I am doing this for vengeance. I am doing this to spite my enemies, and something that his father didn't do. And very particularly in the first film, when Sonny is murdered, he says like, I don't want there to be vendettas. I want this to end. I want all the 5 families to be cool with one another. And then Michael, when he takes the throne, is like, no, we're just going to kill them all. Just kill them all.
And that's the thing, that's why I think the first movie is more successful at this idea than the second one. The second one is almost trying to rub your face in it by showing them paralleling allegedly the same point in their life, although Al Pacino looks 15 years older than De Niro does, if they're
Well,
supposed to be
by
growing up.
the end, he is actually, because
Right.
it's like way into the future then at that point.
But the first one plays this much more eloquently, and I mean, I think the second one is supposed to spring from the first. So he's already broken Michael Corleone. So watching his descent into madness and his descent into hell, and where we are, purgatory, for lack of a better sort of allusion, and all the damage he does to everybody around him. I think there's a great, to your point earlier, there's a great moral message behind it, but it starts getting lost in what becomes a trope of gangster films, which is visual and visceral violence rather than specific plot points. I think it loses itself somewhere there, and the moral counterbalance of like Vito Corleone's character is dropped too early in the movie. It needed one more act, in my opinion, to just round out why we should empathize with Vito. But that ending train scene where they're just driving away, for that to be the last you see of him is kind of anticlimactic for me, because particularly by the end of the movie, I start picking up that there's a real value difference between the two people, and they just throw it away. I mean,
Yeah.
the movie's already too long, but
yeah, well, there's that too. This is me being dumb, and this is not the movie's fault. This is just me thinking that every white actor who's slightly overweight and has a mustache looks the same. So the Don that's over in Italy, I thought was the exact same character as the guy that he eventually kills in New York City. Like I literally thought they were the exact same person. And so when he goes back to Italy with the olive oil, I'm like, and kills him, like, what? Oh, they're 2 different people. I was like, I thought he already acted his revenge. So that was me being stupid and not paying attention, apparently, to what was actually going on. So that's on me. I will say too, again, this maybe is just me getting distracted, which is also possibly a reason. I actually personally had a little bit of a hard time following the narrative at certain times, specifically because Michael is somewhat playing both sides. I was like, wait, so is Hyman Roth actually against them, or are they actually together? And is Frito actually against them, or are they actually together and they're just saying it? I was never 100% sure where those cards were falling, and eventually you find out by the very end.
do
But I
you
wasn't sure.
do you even
But
find out by the end?
well, I mean, he eventually just kills everyone. But I was unsure at some points about like, are we supposed to understand that he's playing somebody, or are we supposed to be intentionally confused about what's going on? And so I don't know if that was a me thing or a movie thing.
It's a movie thing. I mean, I think everything you just put up goes down to the writing and direction. And as much as Francis Ford Coppola is, a master at this stage of his career, the decisions, even within cutting between the time and plot points, I mean, I felt the same way. I've seen it before. I know where this is essentially going to end up. And I almost at one point, not even almost, I just stopped caring about the intrigue. It was over convoluted. And I kept hoping that I'd forgotten the scene where they would have that aha moment. Not necessarily a usual suspects thing, but like, like one of these things where they're like, oh, this is actually who knew what was, Tom Hagen actually knew the overarching structure. And, there's this aha click and everybody's role and the whole intrigue comes apart. But that is not what happens at all. And like you point out, what really happens is maybe you're supposed to think how much of this is in his mind, Michael Corleone, and that his solution in the end is just to murder anybody who knows anything about him. But um, I don't know. That's what leaves me with a bad taste for this movie. Is uh, yeah, I don't know what happened. Other than he becomes an embodiment of cruelty, of sociopathy. All of his, I mean, Al Pacino is great in this, but all of his sort of manipulative and controlling moments start becoming psychopathic, right? And it becomes a bit of like the tone is so much darker than the first one. And by the end of the movie, there's so little to redeem out of any of the characters. I didn't really actually feel like I enjoyed it at all.
Yeah, I think that there is that thematic resonance for me. There is that scene where Robert Duvall as Tom goes to the other family leader, whose name I can't remember right now, and they kind of make the allusion to Rome, right? At the end of Rome, like everyone was out for themselves, and you had one of two choices: you either were taken over by Caesar, or you killed yourself in the hope that like the rest of your family could split up the profits, sort of thing. I really feel like that's what the ending of this is showing. Is like, yes, he's at the top of his empire right now, but we're in the process of seeing Rome crumbling. And I'm assuming that's what the third film is about, but I don't actually know that to be true. That's what I would make the third movie being, is the actual fall of Rome that he's actually built up for himself. Apparently, the very last, literally the last scene that happens is you just see a silent Al Pacino kind of sullen sitting in a chair, being upset. There was a whole scene apparently filmed with his son as a teenager being like, I'm never going to be what you are, and kind of leaving the family, and him realizing that maybe this wasn't worth it. But they lost light or something and couldn't come back and film it, so they just cut that entire scene and just show Al Pacino sitting there. So I think that that's left for you to infer that of course that's not in the movie, but I think he's starting to understand with the killing of Fredo, with the losing of his wife, that it's like, this is not exactly what I initially wanted.
I
So
don't
I'm
know.
losing things here at this point.
And this is the thing about revisionist or over researching the intent.
Yeah.
In its effect, for me, he just looks like a sociopath. Like he just doesn't give a shit. He's clearly alone, old and broken, and much like the old asshole who tried to kill his father, just laying there dying on some rocking chair in Italy, surrounded by guards. He's empty. Like there's just not a lot of substance to him. The preceding scene with the dinner table, I think that's the crux. And I think, if anything, that's where the movie should have ended, if you're going to go this way.
I actually kind of agree with you there, because I really like how that scene,
It's beautiful.
how that coincides with, again, where Michael started and where he actually is now. Because the exact line is, your country ain't your blood.
Yeah.
Right? And Michael at that point is choosing his country over his blood. So there's still that like weird tension that his family has. By the way, I should just say Jen is in the chat here. So hi, Jen, for coming and watching us here today.
I think that what's great about that.
Someone's killing your child.
Yeah, sorry. Ooh. Hold on. Oh wow, he's really having it. All right. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I just gotta make sure it's under control.
Sure.
I'm gonna pause for a second.
Sure. I'll hang out here and just let's talk to Jen here for a while if she's still in the chat. Jen, you can let us know if you have seen The Godfather Part 2 or not. The 3.5 hour long film about gangsters. You can actually stream it right now on Netflix if you wanted to. Actually, both of the first two Godfather films are interesting, and then the third one is not. It's on Amazon Prime that you have to go to if you want to watch the movies or not. They're very long. They're very involved, and some people might even say that they're boring. Jen has this fun fact where she's been to the Coppola winery and not only saw the desk from this movie, but broke the rules and actually touched it. Oh my goodness. Dave, I muted you, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to talk.
This is going to go down internet infamy, but he's freaking out because he's sad about watching a movie. He's watching Santa Paws. And something happened. He's like totally bawling. Oh, I thought
so he's very emotionally involved in Santa Paws. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he fell off the chair or something.
By the way, I was just saying that Jen has the fun fact that she's been to the Coppola winery.
Oh, I didn't know.
And actually touched the desk of the Godfather. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Hopefully it wasn't infected by the murderous spirit.
That's right.
Okay. I remember what we're talking about. So what I thought might have been such a great writing thing, and it's clearly the intent, is turning back time to the first movie and realizing like there's that critical moment. We're spending a lot of time talking about the first movie, but when Michael's introduced with Kay, he's not trying to hide who his family is. He's
being very upfront. Yeah.
But that's a fascinating thing for somebody that allegedly doesn't want to be part of what his family is doing.
See, I've been thinking about this. I honestly read this as projection a lot. It's like those people like, oh, this doesn't bother me. Like nothing about this bothers me, except it totally does. And you're just like lying to yourself that it bothers you. That's what it feels like to me. It's like, no. Like I'm not my family. I'm doing this thing. But the fact he's doing that thing is because of his family. What I mean? He's trying to prove himself, and then it eventually comes back to him.
Well, that's the thing that I liked about the dinner scene is that I don't think he's trying. I mean, I get the feeling he's not trying to prove that he loves his family. I think he's trying to prove that he doesn't want anything to do with them. When everybody rushes off to greet Vito, even though he's the favorite, and he's sitting there solemnly plotting, at the dinner table, that really resonated with me with the way they structure his character's downfall. Because, everything from the way he treats his family, slapping Kay, like demanding that they never are allowed to do anything unless he says, the shutting door scene. I mean, how cruel is that? All of that stuff, it just shows that he is not Vito, that his motivations have nothing to do with his family. And all of it is about his ego. Even murdering Hyman Roth when Hyman Roth is clearly going to die, and Tom Hagen, the character Robert Duvall, is kind of like trying to be this last vestige of morality. Right. He's like, dude, like
he's going to die in 6 months.
He's going to die. Like, let's relax. And he's like, no, they're all done. He killed his own brother. I mean, granted, Frito's a worm, and he
kind of deserved it, but whatever.
Well, if you try to murder your own brother and their family, you may not deserve to die, but you're asking for a lot of trouble.
I can't wait until you become the Don of your family.
I'm not capable.
All right. The machine has asked us to wrap up, although I do need to say just one last kind of criticism. Specifically with Robert De Niro in street scenes, there is some actually pretty awful dubbing that happens in this movie. It's like dialogue is being said and his mouth is not moving at all to what is being said on screen. It was like, whoa, what is going on here? I thought it was buffering or something weird. It's like, oh no, that's just how it is in the movie.
They tried so hard, maybe too hard, to get him to emulate whatever the fuck Marlon Brando was thinking when he put those mothballs in his face. And I think that maybe at Revisionist again, they didn't need to do that. And it could have been an injury, I don't know. You could work that in later, but probably they couldn't pick up anything he was saying on a mic as he's trying to do that stupid voice. And, or, maybe his Sicilian wasn't authentic enough. I have no idea. I don't speak Italian.
Apparently he went to live in Italy for a few months to try and learn how to say things properly.
Method, baby.
Yeah.
The thing about De Niro too is, was he the first actor to start all this extreme weight loss stuff? Some of the numbers have been
Yeah, he did a lot of
oh
losing
my
a
god,
bunch of weight for
Raging
Taxi
Bull.
Driver, and
Yeah.
then for Raging Bull, yeah, he gained like 50 pounds. Like he did a lot of stuff.
Um,
Um, so that is what Dave and I thought. What do you think? You can send any feedback to Kyle and Dave versus the machine at gmail.com. And you can also find us on Twitter or Instagram with the handle KDVSTM. If you want to see the entire list of films we've watched and the ratings we've given, you can go to our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. And if you want to support us monetarily so that we can continue doing this podcast and not usher in the apocalypse, well, maybe that hasn't aged so well. Anyways, you can go to our Patreon page. There's a link in the show notes of this episode. You can support for as low as $1 per month. Of course, we do not want you to donate if it in any way causes you financial hardship. Something you can do for absolutely free, though, is to leave a rating and review on whatever app you use for podcasts. So let's get to the rating of this movie, Dave, because we are, until the machine tells us not to, talking about like the top 250 films of Letterboxd. What would you give this movie out of 5?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it maxed out at a 4 for me.
That's not as low as I thought you were going to give it, to be honest.
I was actually like sitting on a 3.5, but I think that, just trying to be as objective as possible and not necessarily go with this idea of how I feel like after the movie. I mean, it's well constructed and there's great intent, but I don't know. I feel very on the fence for this one. If you catch me on a particular day, I can go down to a 3, and if you catch me on a good day, I'll max out at a 4. So, I think I'll be kind and stay at a 4. It is definitely not, like, for example, a top 100 of all time movie for me. But,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
I am going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Like I said, we've mentioned some of the things that didn't quite work for me, so it's not quite perfect. And again, I'm with you. I would consider the first Godfather to be a superior film to this one as well. So that's where I'm going to leave it here. That means you don't have to do too much here, Dave, because that nicely averages to 4.25, which will round down to a 4. But that will enter our list at the number 4 position.
Okay. 4? Position 4?
Well, here's the thing. We have talked about a few films. Like we recall doing this last week, of course, because we've talked about Spirited Away already.
Oh, yeah.
Spirited Away is number 1. And then in our 1999 season, we've already talked about Fight Club, The Iron Giant, and Magnolia. So those are already in our list.
Okay, we're not creating a new list.
Right. So this is a part of the Letterboxd top 250. We've talked about some of the films that are on that list already. And this is entering our list at number 4.
Okay.
Let's find out what the machine is going to make us watch next week here, Dave. Push this button. I don't know if this is a misprint. Yee? Have you heard about Yee before?
Yee. No. Is that Chinese movie? Taiwanese movie?
Sounds like Taiwanese to me. Not that I speak the language, but that's what it sounds like to my ear. It's Taiwanese.
Helen's Taiwanese. Oh, that's convenient.
Shut your mouth.
I should ask her if she'd be interested in watching this with us.
Yeah. Can you actually contact her from this bunker that we're in currently?
Well, I think we need to leaf through some of this shit and see if we can get out of here.
All right. Well, what have you found there? What have you found?
It's weird. There's a movie poster here. The Killing Fields? No, wait, hold on. There's another one. Dangerous Liaisons. Huh. Oh. Of Mice and Men. These are a lot of weird movies, man. In the line of... Why do you have so many John Malkovich movie posters?
Wait a second. Malkovich. That was the second rune that we decoded. Well, I mean, I decoded, but that was the second rune that we decoded, Dave. Maybe that's the password that the machine was asking for last week. Let me type that in here. Bloop, 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 bloop. Sound effect. Dave.
Yes, Kyle.
No one's going to hear us scream. I think we're on a spaceship.
Huh. That would explain why everything's so smooth.
And everything is in MS-DOS apparently up here. Weird.
Does
All right.
MS-DOS still exist?
Probably. I have no idea, actually. But according to Alien in 1979, that is what ships in the future are going to run on. So we have to assume that that is true. All right. That is going to be our episode. I'm just going to push stop here on my recordings.
Boop, 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 boop.
Just to export.
After we cut out my son's emotional reaction, this is probably going to be a 30-minute episode.
No. We'll get an hour probably out of that. And then...
I hope the audio works with this new mic.
I think so, hopefully.
Or stand.
Malkovich. Thanks for joining us, Jen, for the last little bit of this episode. Hopefully you can be around on Monday afternoon, potentially, because Mr. Chris Taniguchi is going to be joining us here to talk about a movie. So you get to see him. But we're going to sign off here for now because I have a phone call I need to take in a few minutes.
I see. That's why you're rushing.
Well, not necessarily rushing, but all right. I am just going to push stop.